You're watching the ZS Prize, an award presented by ZS. This prize has been designed to recognize, celebrate, and advance innovation in health and healthcare using data, analytics, and disruptive technology. The ZS Prize is focused on shaping the future of Indian healthcare. This year, it is seeking innovative healthcare solutions that have potential for scale, are easily accessible, and affordable for all. In short, the ZS Prize will enable young innovators to create healthcare solutions that have the potential to change the future. The winning teams will create ingenious solutions that will ultimately be the prize for millions of citizens who are in need for an evolved, accessible, and affordable healthcare system today. Welcome to this special panel. Our theme for today is frugal innovation to improve affordability and access to healthcare in India. I'm Suresh Venkat, your moderator for this session. Let me start by introducing our panelists. Dr. Geeta Manjunath, CEO, CTO, and founder of Niramai. Niramai offers a non-contact, non-invasive, non-radiation-based screening for breast cancer. Joe Agarwal, the CEO and founder of Wyza, an AI-driven chatbot to help people suffering from mental health challenges. The current user base of Wyza is 25 lakh plus across 30 countries. Dr. Taslim Arif Syed, the CEO and director of CCAM, the Center for Cellular and Molecular Platforms, an organization that leads the development of life sciences cluster in the Bengaluru region. He is also an adjunct professor at IIT Madras. Ashwin Raghuraman is founding partner at Bharat Innovation Fund, an early stage fund focusing on globally competitive deep tech startups. Ashwin has invested in multiple healthcare startups and is involved in the healthcare ecosystem programs such as the Big Grant Committee of BIRAC and NHA's Ayushman Bharat Startup Grant Challenge. Before we begin the panel, let's hear from Sanjay Joshi, the Managing Principal and Head of Asia at ZS. Sanjay, tell us a little bit more about the thinking behind the ZS Prize.
We are launching ZS Prize with a specific singular focus on advancing healthcare innovation. ZS Prize is an award, a celebration to advance, improve health and healthcare in India. In some sense, it is really a solve for India. We do want to reward healthcare innovations that do the greatest good to the greatest number in India. And particularly in today's environment where, in light of the COVID pandemic, as we would all acknowledge, there is one issue that is dominating all conversation, that is dominating all agenda items, and that is the issue of health and healthcare. Combine that top of mind issue with all the changes that are happening in the healthcare sector, and what you have is a perfect storm of innovation and disruption. And driving this disruption, driving this innovation is kind of advances in computational biology, B, changes in application of new data and AI and information technology to the problems that we could not solve with pure, the kind of data that we had before the onset of new user data, user-generated data. And of course, advances in life sciences from a cell and gene therapy standpoint that is leading to precision and personalized medicine. So what you see here is really a confluence of multiple drivers that are disrupting healthcare. And we want to tap into all these innovation streams. We want ZS Prize to be a catalyst, an enabler, and ZS Prize to be a platform where such innovations could be surfaced and rewarded. So that's the idea behind ZS Prize.
Thanks, Sanjay. All right, on to our panel now. Geeta, first question for you. How did you identify the problem of the need gap for your business?
Yeah, great to be part of this panel. So I'm actually a computer scientist turned entrepreneur accidentally. I was a lab director heading data analytics in a multinational company. I hold a PhD from Indian Institute of Science in Artificial Intelligence. And so I was guiding a bunch of very smart, researchers to develop something new to the world because it was a multinational company. And around that time, of course, we were working with a lot of doctors, healthcare related problems, and so on. And one of my cousin sisters got detected with breast cancer. She was about 40 years of age, and she was actually detected late stage, and a few months more is what the doctor said. And so it kind of hit me, and started reading about that disease. And within about 6 months, one of my other close relative also got detected with breast cancer. She was 38. So then I found that there is a huge gap in the current screening methodologies that is available for breast cancer, and early detection is very, very important. So that's when we started a small research in that space. And after about 1.5 years, I thought, I can't do two things at a time. So quit my job and started Miramai.
All right, so it came from personal experience then.
Very much.
Joe Agarwal, similar question for you. How much time did you take to define the problem versus finding a solution?
Broadly, to decide to do mental health and try to solve for mental health, it was a long journey. I started my startup to do caregiving for elders, which was very personal to me. Did not find product market fit. After having raised angel funding, where people tell you they're believing in you, not in the idea, and you sort of feel responsible for making it successful. And then when product market fit doesn't happen, I went into depression. So out of my personal sense of an imposter syndrome, that I will actually never succeed at anything, etc., I just at one point said, if I'm going to fail, what am I willing to fail doing? And to me, that was mental health. I was willing to fail trying to solve for mental health, having seen what it was personally. The solution has been iterative, and I think even the problems within mental health have been iterative. So you go in with a hypothesis, you try it, some things surprise you by working, many things that you thought would work don't work. And then we are now 360 iterations in, and 4 years in, and still iterating. But over 80 people have written to us to say they're only alive today because of this AI platform. So 2.5 million users later. So it's been a journey.
All right, so both stories are based on personal experience. Dr. Syed, next question for you, and I'm going to ask you a big question, but I want a short answer. What are the 2 or 3 top healthcare problems that need solutions in today's India?
Yeah, no, great to be here. In terms of healthcare, I think one of the biggest things we should in India talk about is that the reach of healthcare delivery, which is a very, very important aspect. While we can pick out sectors, we can talk about infectious disease, we can talk about cancer, we can talk about many other things. But if we just step back, possibly 30 to 40% of India's population is not getting enough healthcare delivery. So one of the important things as a healthcare as a sector, not as a vertical within healthcare, I think there is a need to make healthcare accessible to them. And that is going to be a big challenge. If you then want to take further on, there could be infectious diseases, there could be other diseases, but I think as a whole, if 400 million people are affected by not having primary healthcare services done, that's a big challenge. So any innovations which actually make available healthcare solutions accessible is a big deal. And that's something that one could talk about.
Ashwin, similar question for you. What are the big opportunities for entrepreneurs in Indian healthcare?
Thanks for having me, Suresh. Good to be here. I think there are several opportunities. I echo Dr. Syed's sentiments on the fact that access is a big problem that needs to be solved. India carries a very large disease burden, right? Especially on a number of chronic diseases. And still, when you look at it and think about it from an entrepreneur's perspective, it doesn't come across to us as investors as a large, easily addressable market. And a lot of it is because there are challenges around distributing to this market. And so the innovators and their innovations actually reaching patients is a big one to solve. Having said that, there are 2 things that are happening which are very exciting for entrepreneurs today. One is there is a lot of availability of data now that is coming or getting surfaced, and the regulations and laws around that are improving as well. So there's a lot of plays where you can actually take data, longitudinal data, work on that and try and provide solutions using techniques like artificial intelligence. The second piece, which I think which is happening, is that hospitals, which have earlier been hard customers for entrepreneurs, are changing their mindset pretty much like other sectors, large enterprises have done, which is they're realizing that there are innovative startups out there solving problems, and they are ready to work with them and provide issues or needs that they have and see whether there are innovators out there that can engage with them to solve some of those problems.
Thanks, Dr. Dr. Manjunath, back to you.
Yes.
No, a team is made up of individuals. You need both individual brilliance and a sort of team energy. So my question to you is quite simple. How important is a team in solving a healthcare problem?
It's very, very important. When we say team, it's of course about skills, but it's more about the attitude and aptitude and the relation to the vision, right? And how they relate themselves to the vision, right? So when we say, okay, we want to build an affordable, accessible, breast cancer screening solution which works for every woman on earth, right? Just go with that. Of course, empathy and the intent towards making a solution that actually works and solves the problem is more important. Rather than, of course, I have the best data scientists. Of course, we do have wonderful data scientists. We have wonderful sales and marketing people. But that alignment to the vision, especially I think about first 50 people that you hire for your team should completely relate to your vision, because you don't know what hurdles that are going to come in. They have to be sort of ready to learn on the go and understand where they're going wrong. Have the ability and intent to understand from the customers the feedback, and maybe users' feedback and so on. So this you need a very agile and flexible, still with good perseverance, right? The aptitude of all of these characteristics is what makes the most important part of the team. Of course, without the passion towards solving the exact problem all of us are at it, it'll be very difficult to go much farther. So I guess team is everything. Team is everything, definitely.
All right, so the team is everything. Joe Agarwal, how did you design a team that was uniquely capable of executing your business plan?
Well, it happened quite organically, but I'd echo what Geeta said, that healthcare organizations are very different from, say, an e-commerce startup, where you can't sort of bring in people and bring out people. You can't swap them out. They have to have the resilience to do problem solving. They have to, at essence, be problem solvers. So these are people who get excited about hard problems that take a lot of time to solve. These are not people who are expecting to hack it there. And these are people who expect to, who see the vision of how it can change people's lives, but also see the risks of how making a shortcut can potentially hurt somebody, and therefore are super, vested in the privacy, in the in the clinical safety of the products that they're building, and everybody in Visa, from the person who tags the NLP to the person who, the back-end engineer or the content writer, is very passionate and very, I think for us, the big thing that we did in team building or team culture was that we have these reviews that we've got now over almost 100,000 reviews of people telling us what a difference Visa is making in their lives. Those reviews we fed into our Slack channel. And so everybody in the team is hearing from a customer talking about things every day. So they're getting these 100 messages from customers every day, which keeps them going when there's no revenue or when you're realizing that you have other issues. It just makes you feel that it's worth it. But, and it also shapes the culture. I don't think there are any particular skills, but there's definitely a radical candor as an attitude that we adopted in the company. So we will challenge very directly, but we will care very personally for each other and for the passion.
Right. I like the idea of radical candor. Over to you, Dr. Syed. What are the challenges of startups that they commonly face when they're looking to scale?
I think when startups or innovators build solutions, one of the things that actually drives them is a problem. Problem statement is the key for them. And making a change on the ground is actually makes a huge sense. Even at CCAM, when we do that, we try to put solutions right in front and then go towards it. In healthcare, what happens, and as the Indian healthcare innovation system is slowly maturing, what in terms of stages, we have actually covered very well the first stage of building early good ideas and validating those ideas. The current phase of challenge, which we will overcome, is actually understanding how a working solution in the lab would actually reach the person who should benefit out of it. And that's a long journey. Getting something done in the lab is excellent, but making it a product that somebody uses, be it a doctor or a patient, it actually is a different ballgame altogether. And that involves A, scale up, B, private risk funding, C, regulatory, and most importantly, third, behavioral change if you're doing out of box in terms of innovation. Because behavioral change is a very important aspect when a consumer, a hospital, a doctor, or a patient, how they want to take it up. So those are the main 4 challenges that we are actually going through one by one. And we should overcome it by time, but these are the ones we are focusing on now. And I think India for now requires a bit of risk capital for healthcare innovations. It is not as much as we want. We have friends like Ashwin who is doing phenomenal job in doing that. We are partners in many collaborations together, but we need more of them. And I think that's something that we have to work all together.
All right, speaking of risk capital, let's talk to the investor. Ashwin, when a startup is trying to scale, what do you do to help it?
I think there are several touch points. And first, we must understand that this is not the same across all startups. Startups come in different sizes, shapes, and flavors. And the first thing we need to really understand is what is the type of help a particular startup needs. For example, there could be a startup which really needs help in building team, a topic that you touched upon in an earlier question. And they are looking to scale up because, and they need to have the next level of leadership to take them into the market. And very often there are scientists to build products, but they need to be complemented by strong business brains to help them to take the product into market and then scale it. So that could be one part where we do help them in identifying strong team members. The second part, which I think is key, is just in terms of figuring out how to establish product market fit and what they need to go after. Very often, a lot of innovators have a product. They don't quite have a sense of how to get it into the market and what are those steps, discrete steps that you require to get it into market, how regulatory helps them actually get a product into market, how to engage with large enterprises. In this case, several times it's hospitals. But I think the most important piece of help really that we give them is perhaps access to capital and risk capital, and not just us investing, but we also try and bring other friends from the ecosystem as co-investors to invest, follow-on rounds of funding, which is extremely important. And I'm touching upon this a little bit more because what we really, I mean, risk capital means that you should have the ability to experiment, fail, get up and experiment again without having to go to a bunch of other investors, which means you don't just need capital that will take you this far. You need more than what is typically available. And I have, heard some of the best founders from unicorns that have come out of India saying that the only reason they were able to make it to unicorn status was because they had large amounts of capital available to them to experiment, fail, get up again, and then try something or tweak their offering so that they could hit the market in a better way.
So fail fast, fail cheaply, and fail forward, in short.
Yeah, and have the ability to get up again and run with some fuel in the tank.
Dr. Manjunath, when and what led you to the decision to scale your business?
So basically, when we started 3 years ago, the main thing that we wanted to do was to see whether the algorithms we are thinking about, the solution that we are thinking about, will really try and solve at least a bit of the problem. So when we started doing it, so initially it was just sort of working with a hospital, discussing with the doctors to see how we should actually fine tune and so on. After about a year, actually by the end of the year, we decided to have only one installation. So we didn't want to scale in the first year because as Dr. Taslim also mentioned, it's very important to address the healthcare problems in a completely different way compared to any other probably domains and so on. So the first 1 year was really fine-tuning the product, ensuring it actually works in solving the problem. And after that, the second year is where we actually saw a huge opportunity for scale because we were able to fine-tune it to work at reduced capex, reduced opex, as well as make the product so simple that even health workers could actually start using it. So we talk about frugal innovation, and then that is the sort of the transformation we were able to do in 1 year. Of course, we always had that intent to make a difference to everybody, but we weren't sure whether our solution initially, the hardware itself costed 25 lakhs, and so we said, like, how the hell is this going to reach everybody? But over time, of course, with the constant rigor on the algorithms to work on reduced resolution of cameras and so on, we were able to bring it to a level where we could actually start giving, let's say, to working with NGOs or cancer societies to actually provide this solution at scale to large mass screening camps and so on and so forth. So that's sort of the starting point of how we could start making a difference. With one day, we could actually do up to 50 screens. And then it was about how do we increase these number of partners or collaborators. And so that again, obviously, you need to partner with doctors who would who are called key opinion leaders, who would actually say, yes, this product works. And because it's about cancer, right? Where it's actually the tool is making a life and death kind of a decision, saying whether there is cancer or no cancer. So you definitely need to partner with the clinical experts who will endorse your solution and say, yes, it works. Of course, before doing that, they do clinical trials and all that to make sure that the data is saying that. And then of course, we have now partnered with large diagnostic centers. Recently, we announced a partnership with Apollo Clinics, where we're going pan-India, with already established, medical device and diagnostic vendors.
Joe Agarwal, over 13 lakh users across 30 countries. How did you build scale?
Well, now 25 actually, 25 lakh users.
25 lakh users across 30 plus countries.
Yeah, but I think the whole concept of scale was core to the design of WISA. Because if you try to solve for mental health, then you're trying to solve for the reasons why mental health support does not scale, why so few people ask for support, why so few people get support. And in the design of it being a self-help, AI-guided solution itself is the seeds of something that is anonymous, that can be on your phone and you can talk to it like you would a therapist, and you would learn the techniques that you need to manage your own mental health. And the first level of scale, of course, for us was to go beyond people who have already been diagnosed or are in treatment, and to go to people who are outside of that circuit, who need help, and to not position it as mental health, to position it as something for your own well-being, your happiness. The second part, of course, was the technology. So you have to design tech for scale. I remember we had a very large reinsurer who we were part of their accelerator, and they tried to do a deep dive into the technology to explain to us how we could improve it. And they asked us, we were then serving about I think about 500,000 users annually. And they asked us how much our backend costs, and we said $500 a month. And they said, well, this meeting is costing us more than that. So sometimes in a small company, you have to design with that in mind. You design with HIPAA in mind, even when you're starting up. You design with the fact that you're not partnering with ways to build your AI that will give data outside your system. You're not doing, there are lots of decisions as a startup that you have to make, thinking about scale, thinking about success when it is nowhere in sight. And I think for anybody who's starting up right now, that would be my advice. Assume that 4 years out, you're super successful. What would you regret? And then make those decisions today.
Ashwin, let's speak about regulatory hurdles. What's the kind of support that startups need while dealing with regulatory hurdles?
I think first is importantly an understanding of what is the regulatory pathway that they need to go through. But my experience with good founders especially in the healthcare domain, is that they have understood this extremely well. And at the same time, they need help in, or at least at a broad level, they've understood it well, but the devil is in the details. And they need expert help to be able to take them through regulatory pathways, especially when it comes to something like an FDA, which is halfway across the world, and there are people who've done that in the past. The way we try to solve for this, or we suggest this to our entrepreneurs, is to actually set about an advisory board, which will have clinicians, which is a must in any healthcare startup. But at the same time, bring in somebody who's got strong understanding of regulatory processes and is able to walk the entrepreneur through the nitty-gritties, and actually even have communication with regulatory authorities on a consultative mode, and then advise the entrepreneur on that, because there are experts out there who've done this in the past and you need to lean on them.
Yeah, sure. So I also want to echo that, the regulatory clearance and partnership with advisors and regulatory bodies is very, very critical. So in fact, the reason I'm stating this is the first one was that was the main setback. Initially when we went to the first doctor, they were okay, because we did have a doctor backing us, Dr. Ramprakash sir, who's already a thermographer. He was willing to sign our reports, right? So the medical legal issue is taken care of. So the first hospital was okay to go with us. Later, when we actually started, reaching out to reputed hospitals, they said, okay, where is the regulatory clearance? Where is the systematic clinical trial? So when I just jumped off to create the startup, I didn't realize, I didn't think about all of this. I just said, okay, we have to make it work, right? But when you actually start talking to the customers, you realize, yes, how important a clinical trial. It's a very systematic clinical trial, so systematic that, the test itself is being done by an external party, a very reputed doctor. And if you go near the site, you have to sign in a logbook as a sponsor, as a producer of the machine or a device. You're not even allowed to go near the site where the test is happening, right? It's as critical, and of course, everything is blinded and so on. So this kind of a systematic study, understanding, coming in from a computer science background, understanding how this sort of whole thing works and so on, it was an extremely learning experience. And now I can give classes on, regulatory and clinical science. That's sort of one big hurdle. And this actually started off because, doctors wanted more proof before they accept. So the doctor's acceptance is, of course, you can say it's a hurdle, but I wouldn't call that a hurdle. I said, what do you want to do? What do you need to do in order to get the doctor's acceptance? If you look at it that way, it's basically the regulatory and the clinical trial, systematic clinical trial, which can be published in top tier journals and so on. So that is the first one. There have been some key members who didn't have enough perseverance to go beyond the 1 or 2 years, and sort of they drop off. So suddenly, you feel all the load coming on you. So that's something, you really have to make sure that when you actually partner for especially leadership roles, you have to have very strongly committed people who will come along with you. So these are some of the, two big challenges that we have faced.
Dr. Syed, the frugal innovation is all the rage these days. It's quite the buzzword. Why is frugal innovation so difficult?
Absolutely, Mr. Ming. I think, just if you go by the aspect of it, frugality is possibly, looking at the final objective and making sure that there is an ease around using that aspect, right? It's very important. And when you look at it from the perspective from India for now, there is a geographic difference when the best of the healthcare solutions are made and when they're deployed here. Even within India, if I may say so, there are different tiers of healthcare delivery that happens. The international solutions which are being made are actually done in the tertiary healthcare setups in India. But when you actually go towards a secondary and primary healthcare, you actually see that their infrastructure is not supporting those. So we need to take out the complexity. We need to take out the jargony part of it and make it simple to use, make it frugal, make it more affordable to use. I'll give you a very quick example if I have a half a minute more. One of the major things that India battles is a maternal child health, to be honest. We have still very high mortality rates. When we have premature births, one of the biggest challenges in premature births is that the young neonate, young baby's inability to breathe because the lung capacity is still not developed. For that, there is a solution made which actually kind of supports the respiratory support. It's called CPAP device. I'll not go into details of that. It is made by best of the engineering and healthcare companies. Bring them here, they are available here, but they are not necessarily either infrastructure supportive in our primary and secondary healthcare, which is the 70% of India, and not affordable. So one of our innovators, Koyo Labs, understood that on the ground that this machine cannot be used here in primary health center. They redid the engineering, so took out the complexity, brought down the cost by 5 times. So a 2.5 lakh machine is right now 40,000 rupee machine, which can be there and can be used. This machine is right now used, and the best thing happens when a neonatologist from a village gives you a postcard kind of thing with an anonymized picture of the baby and sends a note saying that I would not have saved the baby if I had not have your device. I think you don't need anything in life more than that. And this was a great example of frugality when they said the complexity and cost is not serving it here. Let's redo the device and make it happen. So I think that's why the frugality in India will make sense as we go forward. I re-say that in a word, indigenous problems need to be solved indigenously in India. So I would say, so that's the crux for me.
Joe Agarwal, India is quite well known for jugaad innovation or makeshift innovation. But does this mentality actually hamper systemic or systematic innovation in the country?
I don't think so. I think that again, as the last panelist said, that we have these very unique challenges. In fact, when you look at, yeah, I'll not talk about mental health, but a foundation that my family has for type 1 diabetes, there are these young children who are given insulin by the foundation, but they're in rural areas with with absolutely no electricity, so that insulin denatures. And for that, our CTO actually designed earlier in his life a clay pot solution. So a version of a clay pot that would be made by a local potter and be able to support that, to be able to prevent in the heat of Maharashtra the insulin not denaturing. Now, that kind of a thing is a frugal innovation, but I don't think it's not systematic. At the same time, if you're trying to do something, much of this innovation doesn't end up going through clinical trials, doesn't end up having the money or the rigor to push it through FDA approvals or push it through a global platform. There's very little research published on it. It takes 2 years often to get a research paper published in a high impact peer reviewed journal. And that kind of time, very often the primary healthcare focused people in India just don't have, because they have a crisis coming every day. And I think as a startup, you have to walk a fine line between those. So for the first year and a bit, we just, as Visa, we just put out products and did a business to consumer, just making sure it works with consumers. But one day we found out that the NHS in the UK was using us, but couldn't prescribe us because we hadn't gone through all of the systemic processes of, having the right assessments, having the right clinical safety protocols, etc. So we became the first app which went through all of that process. Now we're the top rated app by NHS in the UK. And now the government of Singapore has started recommending us to all of their population. So those kind of things, you have to make that transition at some point, depending on whether your objective is to go global or your objective is to solve that immediate problem.
Dr. Syed, what importance does a program like the ZS Prize have with respect to advancing healthcare innovation?
I think significant. I think when I heard about it, of course, with a few friends like even Chandru, I think it's a very exciting one because if we look at prizes, it's not about the fund, but it's about the recognition that comes with the amount of awareness that builds, the amount of excitement that builds. As a researcher, a neuroscientist, I always looked up to people who actually always get the Nobel Prize, the top-notch prize. There is a recognition. It's more than the amount and so on. There's a recognition of excellence. A lot of people work towards building those recognitions going forward. I think healthcare innovation required something of that sort. I think while we have an Infosys Prize, if you have heard of, at the same time in science and other aspects of studies, I think innovation prize at that level is a fantastic start. I think it would allow a lot of young minds who are actually looking at it, who are started their journey or about to start their journey, to look up to something and build on it. And as we continue, I saw the jury. This is a fantastic jury by itself. I think it would definitely allow, convergence of exciting ideas, recognition, visibility of exciting ideas, possibly, their journey afterwards. So that's for them. And for the rest of the community, it's about looking at something and building it. So I think it's a great idea. I think, we are from CCAM, we are very happy to support them as wherever it is required, and put entire network, which is very vast, of healthcare innovators behind it to take it forward. So I'm very, very happy about it.
Ashwin, the impending COVID-19 vaccine is going to open all sorts of opportunities. The most obvious ones, as we know, are going to be in cold chain and logistics, where the vaccines need to be stored from -70 to -20. How should young entrepreneurs look at these challenges?
So I think, you're right. In the sense, two of the leading vaccine candidates are differentiated primarily on account of the temperature they need to be stored at, right? And so the one which needs to be stored at a lower temperature seems to be the better one out there. I do think entrepreneurs can look at opportunities like these. I've seen a bunch of them at a very seed level or a seed stage, which are trying to use phase change material to be able to arrive at refrigeration, so that some of these medical, it's not just vaccines, it could be other medicines, it could be organs, and so on, could be transported through long distances. However, I only want to caution that when an entrepreneur thinks of opportunities, there are opportunities which are short term, and there are opportunities which have a medium to long term. And while there are entrepreneurs already working on areas which are COVID adjacent or which could help COVID, and should definitely use the opportunities, identify them, and then try and build solutions for that. Somebody who's just coming into healthcare and the healthcare space today should really see what is going to last for the next 4 or 5 years, because specifically in healthcare, it takes time to build solutions. It doesn't happen overnight, and then you need to take it through regulatory pathways. There's a long sales cycle. And so think a little bit longer term as to what the problem of tomorrow is really going to be, and not just jump into something which is a little bit more immediate. But if you're doing something adjacent, then definitely try and address some of these challenges that are arising out of COVID.
Right, good advice. Last question of this panel discussion to Joe Agarwal. Some advice for the participants in the ZS Prize. Joe, what is the one thing they should do, and what is the one thing they should not do?
Okay. The one thing that you should do, I would say, is, and it ties into what you should not do, I would give that advice to every founder is, and especially in healthcare, is that identify yourself as a problem solver and not as your success or failure is not your identity. So don't join your identity with, oh, I'm a success or I'm a failure. In healthcare, you just have to say I'm a problem solver, because you might have succeeded or failed in solving a problem, but you know more at the end of every cycle. And you're that much closer to solving the problem, because this purpose takes a really long time.
Some philosophical advice there from Joe Agarwal. Now, before we conclude this panel, let's hear from Ravi Venkatesan, chair of the jury of the ZS Prize. Ravi spoke to us about why he gladly took on this role of the jury chair of this eminent 8-member jury and his aspirations for the ZS Prize.
Well, it's the first year. So number one would be, can we attract and find a small number of people who really have the passion and potential to do important work? I am less obsessed about will their particular idea that they're working on, is that going to really be the most successful innovation or not? Most people, like in venture capital, right? You're betting more on the young entrepreneur or the young innovator rather than the particular idea, because in reality, they will pivot multiple times, and the final manifestation of their work could look quite different. But so we want to identify a small number of these people who we think have the potential to do amazing work. We want there to be some buzz for the world to take some notice so that next year there are even more applicants who are drawn to this. We want the jury members and the participants to have a great time in this process. You know, when I think about my fellow jury members, they're phenomenal, highly accomplished individuals, and they're giving a considerable amount of their time. And I hope that the process gets them excited, they learn, they enjoy meeting these participants, and equally all the applicants get to learn and form these relationships with these eminent people. I think if we can do this, and that allows us next year to do even better, it would be a fantastic start.
Thank you, Ravi, and thank you, panelists. You can watch exclusive interviews of the jury and know more about the ZS Prize at zsprize.zs.com. The jury has discussed healthcare problems that need solutions, their expectations for the entries, and more. You do remember that the program website also hosts an exhaustive compendium of challenges and opportunities in the Indian healthcare sector designed to help to solve for India. Registrations for the ZS Prize and submissions are open. Submissions close on the 21st of December 2020. Thank you, panelists, and enjoy watching.